Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Movie Mayhem. I'm Donnie Shields, and joined with me again is my great co-host Chase Morgan Hewlett. Chase, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. How are you, Donnie?
I'm not too bad. Chase, right away, let's do some housekeeping because our over-under section that we did, it was gonna be fun because I thought it would build up for a few months, but it sadly did not for the over-under. The actors strike is officially over. So whether we're happy about that or not, the actors are back in business and they made it to 118. We had an over-under on day 114. I picked around the 200 day mark. Chase picked under and he won. Now, we both had a win this past weekend at the box office. Captain Marvel 2, which is the Marvels, opened up with a subpar $46 million across the United States. Very, very far behind the first Captain Marvel, which, we both knew that it wasn't going to break $1 billion like the first one. Whether or not we believe that the first one actually did break a billion, that's a different story. But it definitely will not for this one. Chase, the original box office prediction for the United States was 75 mil on opening weekend. Came in at 46 mil. Have you been tracking or following the news on the Marvels?
No, because I don't really care. Honestly, I just don't care about. I don't. I haven't. The first time I saw a trailer for it was when I saw the creator in theaters, and I didn't really care for the movie. I didn't really care for Captain Marvel. Shoot me, but so I haven't. I guess if I don't care about the movie or anything, I just don't really look into it. You know. So
Well, I mean, you're not the only one. So maybe this is where the conversation will go this evening. I had a conversation with another person that I'm hoping to bring on the podcast here, a big history buff. And I think you would actually enjoy a conversation with him, Chase, because you guys are both big
yeah.
in the history. But I was talking about the state of Star Wars and Marvel. And is it could it be a potential multiple things? Could it be that after Endgame nobody cared anymore because they saw their whole franchise, which is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, wrapped up in a nice ribbon for the audience? The Russo brothers wrote it, directed it for the most part all the way through the series, and then they tailed out after the story that they told. And now we're kind of living in the let's use a Star Wars reference here, even though we will get to Star Wars, but we're kind of living past the Empire days where civilization's trying to rebuild per se, but they're trying to rebuild their empire movies. And quite frankly, I don't really think too many people actually do care, including myself. um Whether it's of a multitude of different levels, I don't know. You could name all the things that Marvel and Star Wars has done wrong, but Chase, do you have a personal opinion on what we've seen for as far as the decline of Marvel?
I think it's difficult to move on after Endgame and Infinity War because ever since the Marvel movies started coming out, really, in 2008 with Iron Man, you had this developing idea with Thanos and the Infinity Stones, and then those two led together, and the Endgame and all that. That was the final battle. That was what we all been waiting for over 10 years. And so when that gets defeated, you try to do another phase and it just doesn't really pan out as well because it's like defeat you can't create a better enemy or better bad guy. It's kind of like in Supernatural. Now I don't know that show at all. I don't care for it. But when they beat Lucifer and then they continue, it's like what's worse than Satan himself? Like once you beat the biggest of the biggest, it's like, okay, now the other ones are just like, whatever, they'll get beat. It doesn't matter. So I just think that there comes a point where things should end. And I'm going to quote a very popular movie series that I am a huge fan of, and that's Lord of the Rings. Like, they're like those three movies. You can count the Hobbit movies if you want, but I'm just talking about the three movies. There's three of them. They're good. They're based on books. Enemy dies, and that's it. Like they don't continue it. And I think good things should end. I don't think you should force something to continue. That's why you see TV shows that are really good, that end. So that's my opinion. I think things that are really good usually end. Like Breaking Bad, great series, and it ended. And they made movies based on the series, but they didn't continue the series really. They continued it based on characters, but Breaking Bad ended it, and that just shows that it was a good series, and that's my opinion.
And I think the key too with how you end the series is also the right timing. Because you could go back to the CW series now with the Arrowverse, which then the Flash took over, then all those shows kind of went downhill. Almost like you don't know when to end a good thing either. And I think a lot of properties and IPs have that issue. So that sweet spot, I do feel like Endgame was that sweet spot where you could have easily said, "Hey, we're going to hang it up. Maybe we'll put out a few like productions here and there." But the fact is that they were still aiming for 3, 4 movies a year to build up for the next big villain. I think everybody forgets there wasn't a lot of Marvel films coming out when Iron Man 1 really kickstarted this. It was Iron Man 1 and then it was Thor. But like you were getting one a year for the first like 3, 4 years. And then we got two a year and then 3 a year and it built up. But they're following the formula as if they're still in the days of Endgame as they're building up. So I think maybe that's also part of it as well. I don't know, but I do feel like people have really been content with how it ended in Endgame. I think a lot of people, and again, not to jump off task a little bit and off topic, but there was always this idea of, hey, the big heroes kind of ended as well, their stories. You had the Hulk, you had, even though the Hulk's still in it, but you had the Hulk, you had Iron Man, you had Thor, you had Captain America. We saw Captain America and Iron Man basically, unless the reports are that Robert Downey Jr. is already in conversation to come back, the their stories end. And those are characters that everybody, whether you read the comic books or not, you heard of them. Now we're going in with these characters that are just, whether they're newly created, whether they're swapped a little bit, or they're just lesser characters that people really disregard the comics for, or like you really had to be that comic book nerd to really dive and know who they are. And I don't think that that's drawing normal people either to come watch these films.
Yeah, and yeah, characters you've always grown up with as a kid, and then it ends. But it's really hard for Marvel to just close the doors after Endgame. They've made so much money and they built a whole studio behind comics. So you can't really tell them, hey, you gotta close the doors now. Thanos is dead. They're going to continue. So I kind of knew that was going to happen. So it's kind of hard to say that, but you're right. It's kind of hard to get that same feeling back.
So
But
let
you
me
always have those movies to go and watch. You always have those movies to go back to. And I get on a kick every now and then to just go back and watch the original Marvel movies and that. But I'm not much into Marvel like some people are. I would rather watch Star Wars, the movies, not the series, the movies. But we've talked about this before that sometimes the unknown is good. Like Obi-Wan series, I didn't need to know any of that. None of that mattered to me. There's one thing that mattered to me, and they didn't talk about it. So it's like I didn't need to know any of that. All I wanted to know is how he learned to talk to the people, to the Jedi's who have passed, and Yoda taught him to talk to Qui-Gon. That's all I cared about. And I watched that whole series, well, that whole season just for that moment, and it never came up. So,
And then the other thing too is when you put together series that aren't like that from the original creator, then you have plot holes that kind of start filling in as well. So
mhm.
the more you dive into depth and detail of specifically that works that aren't yours. I mean, I think Lord of the Rings is a good example because Lord of the Rings, since the Jackson series, has really gone downhill. But you have a lot of different voices, and then there's like plot holes, and it takes away from the original. But to go along with the Obi-Wan series, it wasn't the questions that weren't answered, like talking to the Force Ghost. It was the, hey, why did he leave Luke on Tatooine when his whole mission was to like protect this kid? Then all of a sudden, a night sister shows up and actually sees Luke, and then it's just like all cool. Like, no, that's supposed to be a top secret. Like, nobody for the whole realm of the Empire is not supposed to know that this kid is growing up here. So it
Yeah.
does take away from it.
Mhm.
But again, so let's not dive, even though we did dive into Star Wars and Marvel, but let's go to a broader spectrum here, Chase. because one of the things I was going to talk about with Marvel was not only about the series. By the way, nice cat. I love the cat. Just hopping around
Okay.
over there.
She tried to
Um,
cross. She tried to cross here, and I blocked her. So if anyone saw that, that was me blocking the cat.
so um, when we, I love it. I do love it. It's cute. Maybe the cat has an opinion on this. Um,
Probably.
Chase, Marvel, of course, everybody's talked about the CGI and the graphic. What is it with films nowadays? You have the big budget films that are like $200 million with this effect heavy production, but it looks faker every time we see them. Like, why is it? What is the state of cinema in your personal opinion? And do you feel like we're going to go back? You know how there's always generational trends. Do you feel like we're ever going to go back to the modern day set building and get away from some CGI, like full CGI movies? Because there is like an authentic look that's not there. Do you agree with that statement, kind of?
Um, I think no, because of AI. I think we're going to dive deeper into a point where a whole movie is going to be made by AI, and you're just going to have someone sitting at a computer typing a whole story, and they make a movie. And the whole art of film is going to be kind of drained away because anyone can type a cool story and it will look so real. And I think that's just a downfall. Mark my words. I think that's going to happen, which kind of sucks because it won't be real. It'll just be fake. Even though, movies are technically fake if you look at it that way, it won't be like a real true story. It won't be like a Casablanca anymore. It will just be this generated, filtered mess, but it will look pretty.
So,
And, you know, the quote I always say, you can polish a turd, but it's still a turd. That's what I always say. So, um, that's what I think is going to happen. But when it comes to CGI, the thing that makes it look fake is when you focus on it too much, when it's on the screen too much, like Fast and Furious, Marvel. And I'm going to bring up Lord of the Rings again. When you watch Lord of the Rings, the stuff that is truly CGI, you don't focus on that much. And if you want an example, watch the scene when Gandalf comes with Rohan down to Helm's Deep. If you focus on when they're running, there are sections, like shots, that are really fake. You can see how Gandalf is riding on his horse, and you're like, that is not real. That looks awful. But it's so quick that you don't notice it. You get a glimpse of what the shot looks like, and then it cuts to another angle. And so I like how Lord of the Rings does that, and that's why it looks so good. And that's maybe why The Hobbit doesn't look as good, is because you might focus on it too much. But also, Lord of the Rings use miniature figures and they use prosthetics, and they didn't go really CGI wise. But when they did go CGI, they didn't focus on it. And movies like Marvel and all these nowadays, they focus on it too much. Where if you have like a ship exploding and some superheroes jumping from steel to steel to get away from the explosion, like at some point you're like, that's just fake because you're focusing on it too much. But that's my opinion.
Chase, so I hear that there's some trailers out there in which might captivate the audience, and it also captivated us. But I'll let you start with your anticipated trailer from Netflix that you saw.
So I saw the trailer for Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is coming out February 22nd of next year. And I am really stoked for this. I'm really proud that Netflix is kind of changing their spectrum, it seems like, and they're going towards more shows that were animated, and now they're bringing to live action. Like they had One Piece, which was a success in my opinion, and then now they're having this. And I think people are real excited about this adaptation because the last live action film, which was directed by M. Night Shyamalan, was awful, and we don't speak of it.
It is the forbidden holiday special of Star Wars, basically, just like
Oh
them.
gosh, yeah.
They are forbidden forever. One of the things watching the trailer, Chase, there are a lot of aspects of that show that I forgot, and it's been a while since I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I know that I could watch on Netflix if I wanted to watch the animated series again.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that The nice thing is Netflix seems to have the properties on there, like the original properties, and then their new stuff, like One Piece. You can actually watch. They actually have the rights to watch you can watch One Piece animated series and One Piece, the Netflix show. Which
Yep.
sometimes studios don't actually have that. They're able to pay for like just the production that they're trying to create and not like the original content that really drew the fans in. So it's nice that Netflix has both to watch.
I like that too, because like for One Piece, for example, you could watch the live action and it kind of is a speed run through the series because it's like over 1,000 episodes and continuing. And then you can watch the animated to get more detail. Because in the first episode of the anime series, the ending of it, he's just leaving the ship. And at the ending of the first episode of the live action, he's like 5 or 6 episodes down already. So I don't know if the new Avatar series will be like that, where it will be kind of like shrunk a little and talk about the real important parts. I wonder if they'll do that as well. But it's kind of nice that you can go back and forth.
Barring a potential failure on their end, just like One Piece, we expect them after the raving success of One Piece, you expect them to have uh another season to come out. I mean, nobody looks at Avatar right now. It's like, okay, we're only having one season. It's not a limited series like the Obi-Wan Kenobi series and stuff. We expect that. So, barring something unprecedented where it might absolutely be terrible and trash, I have no idea. Although I do have to say, the one thing with animated, anytime that you take an anime style that has creatures, not just like obviously like you had humans, but you had creatures and mythical creatures kind of in that realm. I'm not going to say that I was really captivated by the trailer yet at their how the animals looked. That's something that I'll probably have to get used to. It's kind of like watching like anything with aliens in. You know, you see the trailer, it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to watch more of this to actually get used to it because sometimes they look a little bit weird.
I got chills when I saw the animals.
Okay, so it actually worked for you. That's good.
Yes, but I remember it as a kid. In fact, when was the last time you watched the animated series?
It's been a while.
I was a kid. I don't even think I was in middle school.
I
It's
was
been a
gonna say it
long
would
time.
probably be that same way. So to me, it didn't bring back as many chills because I think I do forget most of that series as far as like, the twists and the turns of the events. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm sure there's gonna what I'll have to do is I'll have to personally watch the animated series and then watch the show when it comes out. That's what I'll have to do,
Yeah.
just rehash, because that's unlike One Piece, where I was like, okay, I'll watch the first episode of One Piece, the anime, and then I'll watch the first episode of One Piece. And then I ended up watching the whole series of One Piece as far as like the live action and still kept the anime at the first episode.
You couldn't continue.
I
That's
didn't
so
continue. It's not that I couldn't, I didn't. There's a difference.
okay.
But because couldn't means that you didn't have the time. I had the time, I just didn't want to.
You chose not to. Yeah,
I
that's
chose not
okay.
to.
At least you watched one of them. But I'm a big nostalgia guy anyway, so anything in the past I will enjoy from my childhood or even apparently my grandparents' childhood I will enjoy. So that stuff will cling on to me a little more. But what was the trailer you wanted to talk about?
Well, Chase, since you liked watching things that are in the past, let's go back to 2001. Okay. It was the first Planet of the Apes movie. At least it wasn't the first, actually. Let me rephrase it. It wasn't the first Planet of the Apes, but it was the
Yep.
one that put Planet of the Apes really on the map that most people enjoyed. Then we flashed to 2011, where we had Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I believe it was. And then it
Yep.
started this whole new like Jurassic Park style, Jurassic World, and you went through year 3. And Chase, let me for the audience sake, I have some numbers written down here. Okay. The 2001 Planet of the Apes raised 362 million. Okay, that's what it grossed. The 2011, 470 million. 2014, 710 million. You would think the numbers would continue to go up the more the series goes.
Yeah.
The third one, which should have been the last one because it was the worst out of all of them, grossed
Was that
400.
Dawn?
It was War for the Planet of the Apes.
War? Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah,
In 2017, grossed 480. So it was down from 710, but still above the 470 from 2011. That $300 million drop would be enough to say, no bueno. Like, no, we're not doing it anymore. Okay. Well,
yeah.
then we get a trailer for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And it's not really a trailer, it's more like a teaser. Chase, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I'm kind of intrigued. And I don't know why, because I had my heart, because I did like the first two, the 2011, 2014 Planet of the Apes. And then they kind of ripped my heart out with Woody Harrelson being in War for the Planet of the Apes. And it was an absolute failure, in my opinion. And now I get to watch the series, which again is not one of my highest rated series. You know, it's not like something that's like my ultimate sci-fi movie experience for Planet of the Apes, but I get to watch something that kind of resonates with me, that I went through high school watching this series, that, or the new trilogy that they created per se. And I saw the animations on screen and like how they would bring the apes to live action. And I'm kind of intrigued, but I know it's going to be terrible. So Chase, what do you say to the normal person that is like me, that is ready to get their hearts ripped out because of how bad this movie could potentially be because of how the last one was?
I would say that you should watch the Planet of the Apes from the 60s with Charlton Heston, because that is the true original film, and all the films that go with it. Like, I like how you brought up the new ones, and I'm sitting here thinking, I don't even think of the new ones. I don't even think of James Franco. I think of Charlton Heston when he was seeing the Statue of Liberty on the beach. And he was screaming, "Damn you all to hell." Everyone knows that line, even if you haven't seen the movie. So I would say you should go watch the original, because those are the good ones. I think the new one looks pretty interesting. I think the trailer was good. Is it going to be better than what I grew up watching? No. But when you grew up watching something and then something new is introduced, it's kind of hard to move on from that. It's kind of hard to, have something be replaced. And that's for me with Planet of the Apes, because I like the originals. But I'm an old movie nerd anyway, so I'm going to like the originals anyway.
Well, I mean, plus the sets, we've talked about this prior in the podcast, the sets in which, like, what makes a film feel real, the CGI, and everything else that comes with it. I'm sure back in the 60s, if they had this kind of budget or this technology, it would have been what the first one possibly was in 2011, or even now, who knows? And I'm sure they would have did, and like with an increased budget, I'm sure they would have increased like the spectacle. But
Yeah.
they didn't need that back then either, because they had a genuine telling of a story.
2001? I forgot about this one. It had Marky Mark in it. It was a Tim Burton movie.
It's really not good that they're continuing, because one of the final things when I saw the last Jurassic Park film, and I will say that these kind of go hand in hand. The last Jurassic Park, and Chase, I don't know if you watched it, so there's gonna be some spoilers. Okay. One of the things is when you bring back the old cast of characters, you just feel like, oh, okay, like this is building up for something big. And then it's a letdown. And there's some shots in this trailer that actually have a callback to 2001 in the 60s and the 60s version, kind of trying to tie everything together, because I guess they felt like they didn't do it with their third act like they should have done in 2017. So now let's bring it back in 2024 on Memorial Day, and let's try to tie all these missing pieces together. And to me, I just don't feel like it's going to work. But there's some excitement to see if it does tie in, because just like in this trailer, Chase, you watched the trailer as well. So on the beach scene, like you can kind of see a little bit of Statue of Liberty. You can kind of see like the barge that gets stuck. Like those were stuff that showed up in 2001 and also in the 60s film.
Well, definitely in the 60s film. Definitely. And I know these ones are prequels. So I would watch it just to see if they're connecting them, because there's got to be a point where they're connected. And I would just be curious on when that is, and if they're going to remake all of them. Because I have them listed over here. They have Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Those are all the films from the 60s. Well, it'll be 60s, early 70s is when they came out. But there's got to be a way to tie in. So that'd be my only interest, my opinion.
How many are on that list? Just to clarify, just what? Those old 60 ones. Yeah, just how many are there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5. All right. Wow, this is crazy. Okay. So, and that doesn't include the 2001 version, right? That's just the 60s.
Just the 60s.
Okay. Let me just say this because this is something that blows my mind. I did not realize this either. Okay. With this Planet of the Apes film coming out, okay, this new one, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This is number 10 of the Planet of the Apes franchise, meaning it has matched Fast and Furious. That is, I did not realize they had that many.
But there's a difference. Fast and Furious came out in our lifetime. All
That is
10.
true.
Planet of the Apes, there's only been four? Four, Kingdom being five, that have came in our lifetime. Now, in my mom's lifetime, there have been 10. But, which, that is crazy to think. Like, we're going to get old one day, Donnie, and we're going to look back, and they're going to be coming out with these movies. And our kids are going to be like, I love this movie. And we're going to be like, that's nothing. You should see the old one. And the old one will be what we're calling new right now.
Well, dementia runs in my family, so it'll just feel like it's a new movie.
You're just going to forget. Like, they're going to remake some Star Wars movie and recast Anakin. And we're going to be like, no, that's not Anakin. And our kids will be, that's Anakin.
But we did like the same thing, just even though it wasn't recasted, but we've done the same thing with like a lot of different products that have came up as far as like Marvel and Star Wars, even now, let alone let's go back and recast and remake and stuff like that. I mean, you see, of course, you see the outrage, whether it's like the Snow White controversy or whether it's like the Lion King live action, which that is still one thing that I don't understand because to me, the Lion King live action, I saw in theater and I actually enjoyed it. I know, but there was a lot of people that hate that live action and again, the film quotation live action. What does that mean? It's still CGI. There's not real people, and I get it. But I actually enjoyed that moment, and I actually didn't care that they added an extra song. It was a little bit weird because it didn't like you're singing along, and then all of a sudden the song comes on. It's like, and I don't know those lyrics, and I'm not okay with that. But there's that. You're absolutely right that it's crazy to think about in our lifetime that they're going to recreate these things, but they already started too.
Oh yeah. I know we've done it. I think every generation somewhat does it, especially nowadays as movies are a big part of our life and whatnot. Like I remember when I went to see the new Mary Poppins when it was in theaters with Emily Blunt, and I went with my mother, and she went to the original in theaters. That ages my mom. Sorry, Mom. But she saw the original in theaters back in the 60s. And I after the movie, I was like, Mom, was it good? She did a really good job. She's like, yeah, but that's not Mary Poppins to me. And it's not Mary Poppins to me either, because I grew up with the old one. But they're gonna remake these films that we grew up watching, and it's just not gonna be the same. I mean, I think that every now and then. I think it's funny more than anything.
It's crazier to think about too. So like it's a little bit different when you're recasting the actress or the actor to play, another person that already played. Although you got away with it with the Alec Guinness, Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan Kenobi thing, like that was forgiven. It was filled in beautifully. It's something else though when you have somebody like say Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick. I would say, my dad went to go see that in theaters. I went to go see Top Gun Maverick with him in theaters. So like you got the old Top Gun crowd, you got the new Top Gun Maverick crowd coming together. And there was nobody that I heard of that complained about walking out of there that loved the original Top Gun. Like that was one of the universally beloved, like Top Gun Maverick of last year was like universally beloved. Now we talk about Indiana Jones. You still have Harrison Ford playing Indiana Jones, but you're over here like, that's not my Indy. And it hasn't been their Indy since the 2000s.
No, but at least it's still him. Like I always tell people I'm not big on the new indie movies, but I will watch them because I like the character. No matter what, Harrison Ford will be Indy, and he'll still act like the character, even if he's in his 80s. He still will be Indy. Even in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, he was still Indy. But yeah, just watch Last Crusade. And I remember, okay, this is funny story. So my fiance never seen them, so we watched them all, and we watched Temple of Doom, and she didn't like it. She thought it was weird. And then we watched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and from her mouth, as we sat on the couch, she looked over at me and she said, "I miss Kali Ma." And it was the the greatest review I've ever heard of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Now take her to see the Dial of Destiny.
I want to see it so bad. I'm waiting for it to come on.
Then she'll be like, I miss Shia LaBeouf. Crazy how this has became. But no, I mean, it's crazy to think about, though. I did not know that with Planet of the Apes, that because, like, of course you had the original Planet of the Apes. In my eyes, I knew that one came out. I couldn't tell you if it was the 60s or 70s, but I could tell you that I used to watch 2001 and the 2011, 14, 17, and now probably regrettably this 2024 one coming out. But I didn't realize that there will be 10 Planet of the Apes, because to me it kind of feels like the franchise stamp happened to them, like that franchise specifically in 2011 on. Like that's when it started to feel like a franchise. I don't know if it's because they were coming out consistently, but that list you gave out, like in the 60s, they were still coming out consistently between the 60s and 70s too. So it feels like the franchise money grab stamp got placed on it in 2011.
Well, they were very popular. According to my mother, who has introduced me to the old ones when we were kids on VHS, they were really popular because they came out between the 68 and 73. And so she said they were very popular when they came out. Like they go to the drive-in theater, sit in the car, watch the movie, and they were awesome. Ask your mother. I'm sure she knows about them.
Okay.
And it has Charlton Heston in it.
True. But Chase, I will give you one, and I'm pretty sure I know what film it's going to be. But by happen chance that I don't, okay? To end this podcast, Chase, okay? Give me one film of any era that had a theater that you could go to, you could go watch it. What film would you have loved to have been alive for to see the premiere of throughout history?
Gone with the Wind. Immediately.
I knew that. I knew that. I was hoping there'd be a different answer, but I knew right that. Okay, give us a second one.
Casablanca.
Fair enough.
I can give you a third one if you want.
Give me a third one.
Ben-Hur.
There you go. Okay, I'm gonna give you. So I don't know if I could go that deep because obviously then I would get into the original Star Wars in 77 and I would get into Jurassic Parks. But I will say this. If there was one film that I would love to have seen, because I have stories from my parents actually went to the beach to see this film. Like they were out, like they were at the beach when this film came out. It was Jaws.
That would have been cool.
And I think that would be the film that I'd want to see. If like you could go back for like one day, take the time machine, go back and like go to premiere, go live in that time. I think Jaws, being in that setting and feeling it during the summer when everybody was scared of that fake prop shark. That was just terrifying people.
No, I agree. You know, what's funny is I have movies I would want to see, like Jurassic Park, Star Wars, but I have to pick my favorites. Like Godfather would be another one. My grandmother used to tell me how they all went to see The Godfather. And I was like, I wish I could see that in theaters. But I got to experience seeing all the Lord of the Rings in theaters with my fiance. Extended edition, all in a row. It was a 14-hour film that we saw in the theater. That was the best experience ever in the theater. That was awesome. Because you had the surround sound, everything was just awesome. People dressed up as characters, people were hollering and whistling and everything. So that was a good experience for me. But yeah, no, I wish I could have seen some of those older ones back in the theater. But they do come out in theater every now and then. You just have to know when to find it. Like Saving Private Ryan is coming back to theaters this month. And I think that's really cool. Though it's only in theaters for a couple of days. And some people are like, why would you go watch it when you can just own it at home? Like I have 2 copies at home, but I just like the theater. And some of those movies you just need to see in the theater. They're meant to be in the theater. That's what movies are meant to be, is in the theater, not at home. But I'm going to go on my rant again. So I'm going to shut up before I go off.
Did you, and this will absolutely be the final question here to end this podcast. Chase, have you been to a lot of whether now I still love the old school, like the midnight premieres, because I remember going to midnight premieres in high school, even before they changed it over to like, oh, now we have 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon showings on opening day on that Thursday. It used to be the Thursday night, one showing, this is it. Did you ever
Yeah.
go to one of those? And what was your favorite reaction to be among the fans? Like, did you have a certain film that like you just sat there and like had the best premiere with?
Um, so where I grew up, I was like an hour and a half from a theater. So we didn't get to go as much as we wanted to. But I do remember seeing Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest in theaters, like when it first came out, like the very first hour. And I remember when Jack Sparrow dies, and the whole theater was like, "What?" And everyone freaked out. Everyone had a panic. A couple hats flew in the air. Like, what? And I remember that big impact. But then we went and saw At World's End, and then when you see Jack and he's like licking the rock and telling it to shoo away, like everyone was cheering and you couldn't even hear what they were saying. So that would probably be the most audience impact that I've had at a theater.
This is absolutely crazy. And for the audience, we didn't prep these questions at all. Okay. I went, and it would have been my sister's senior year. Okay. We went to go see On Stranger Tides for Pirates of the Caribbean. That is my number one reaction. We had Pirates of the Caribbean, Jack Sparrow costumes. Everybody was dressed up. Like, it was crazy. Now, don't get me wrong. When I say this, I understand I can look back and tell you that On Stranger Tides was a bad film for the most part. It wasn't nearly as bad as I think the previous one that just came out. I can't remember the order of Pirates of the Caribbean anymore, but
Dead Man Tell No Tales is what it's
yeah,
called.
that one. Um, that's one. So
That one.
that's one. So it wasn't as bad as that one, but I can
Mhm.
tell you guys the amount of laughter that was in the theaters, the excitement to see a character like revived on screen, because this had been a few years since, like, what, that was like a 5-6 year gap in between the At World's End and then On Stranger Tides. Like, it
Yep.
was a crazy reaction. And number two, if I had to do a number two, getting off that franchise, I had never, and this is something I think your fiance would enjoy. I had never seen the Twilight films. Okay, like category, like, in order.
In order, yeah.
I have never seen them in order. Okay, before my sister and her friend drugged me to the finale, and when they're in the fight sequence at the end, okay,
Okay.
when all the heads are getting ripped off, you think your main characters are just dying. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
The amount of There was one lady behind us that as soon as one of the bad guys' heads got ripped off, she stood up and she's like, there was so much, and then when it all was like a dream sequence, it was like, oh, like the whole room sighed. And I would say that was the most aggressive crowd I was ever in, but it was the most exciting as well. So that was a shout out to the Twilight fan base for actually going hard on that one, because they're number two on the list.
I got drugged to two of those in the theater, and I told myself no more. I saw the first one in New Moon in theaters, and people, I've been told that I am hard of hearing, and the reason is because Jacob took his shirt off in the theater for the movie New Moon, and all the women in the world screamed at the highest pitch, and that's why I can't hear nowadays. And so I said no more.
Taylor Lautner has forever deafened him.
Yes.
That's how that goes.
Stick with Shark Boy, okay?
Or Abduction. Abduction was actually, I actually enjoyed the Abduction film. It was a
I like
little,
that
it was, it
and
was a short little blockbuster, but
now he's in Adam Sandler's group and he's just a fool. He just plays the dumb one. So I like him as that. The Ridiculous Six, yeah.
yeah.
That's prime time Taylor Lautner right there.
Chase, you want to shout out where people can follow you at?
Mainly Instagram at Chase Morgan Hewlett. Donnie and I have a podcast called The Golden Review, which is on Spotify and Instagram. So go check it out. We're actually trying to get it on YouTube as well. because I need a little bit more viewers than 4 or 5. And then True Light, we have a couple videos on there. One is a Soldier's Blessing, which Donnie likes to talk about with all the views it's got. It's been really good to us. And I'm starting to put out videos for prayer, Bible verses. So they're really short, less than a minute. So go check that out. And yeah.
Well, everybody, Chase, thank you for joining me. This has been Movie Mayhem. Hopefully, you guys tune into the next episode. We will be here all November, once a week. In December, we may or may not have a Christmas special lined up. If we don't have the Christmas special or holiday special, we'll be back as well. So go check out Chase's channel. Go watch some of our old clips and highlights and short films on our channel. Thank you guys for tuning in.